Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be looking into the Cambodian genocide.
Yeah, one of
the most brutal regimes in history.
Just absolutely brutal.
Really a period that, from 1975 to 1979, tests our understanding of humanity.
Right.
The Khmer Rouge, led by Pol Pot, attempted to systematically eliminate not just lives, but an entire culture.
It's hard to grasp, but it's absolutely crucial that we look at this and try to understand it.
Right.
What happened in Cambodia is a stark warning about unchecked ideology and power.
For sure.
And it has lessons for us even today.
Absolutely. So to really get into how the Khmer Rouge came to power, we need to go back a little bit further and kind of look at Cambodia's position in Southeast Asia during a very turbulent time, the Vietnam War.
Right. So Cambodia was deeply impacted by the Vietnam War.
Right.
And really caught in the crossfire of a much larger conflict.
Yeah.
You might be surprised to learn that the U.S. actually dropped more bombs on Cambodia.
Wow.
That were used during the entirety of World War II.
Oh, my gosh.
We're talking 2,756,941 tons of ordnance.
It's hard to even imagine what that must have been like for people there.
It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
There's a chilling account from one survivor who described the bombings. They said, "We heard a terrifying noise which shook the ground. It was as if the earth trembled, rose up, and opened beneath our feet."
Yo.
And this constant fear and destruction had a devastating psychological impact on the population.
So you can totally see how that devastation, plus the political turmoil that was already existing, created a breeding ground for this extremist ideology to take hold.
Right.
And, they promised to return to a simpler agrarian society, free from corrupting foreign influences that they saw. It's called it Year Zero.
Exactly, Year Zero.
Yeah.
So the Khmer Rouge, they exploited this chaos and anger.
Right.
They were initially a guerrilla movement. But Year Zero was their vision.
Okay.
To completely dismantle Cambodian society and rebuild it from scratch.
Wow.
So think about it. No money, no religion, no intellectuals.
Jeez.
They were targeting anyone who represented the old ways.
Right.
Essentially anyone that they perceived as a threat.
So if you were a teacher, if you were a doctor, a monk, even if you just wore glasses, you were...
Absolutely.
Nah.
They saw those groups as enemies of the revolution.
Wow.
Obstacles to their vision of a pure agrarian utopia.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine what happened to all the people who... what did they do with the cities?
Right. So they forcibly evacuated entire cities.
Wow.
Drove millions of people into the countryside. Families were torn apart.
Oh, my goodness.
Children were separated from their parents and indoctrinated into the regime's ideology.
Oh, my God.
Often trained to spy on their own families and neighbors.
That's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, what were the conditions like
for
these people who were forced to work on these farms?
So life under the Khmer Rouge was a living nightmare.
Yeah.
Imagine you're ripped from your home, forced into backbreaking labor on a collective farm.
Yeah.
Food is scarce.
Wow.
Disease is rampant, and fear is your constant companion.
Oh, my goodness.
And these farms became the infamous killing fields.
Right.
Which are a chilling testament to the regime's brutality.
Yeah.
Thousands upon thousands were executed and discarded in mass graves.
That's awful.
Their stories silenced.
I mean, everyone's heard of the killing fields, but to hear it described like that sends chills down my spine. Yeah. I mean, what were people killed for?
People were killed for the slightest offenses.
Really?
Speaking a foreign language.
Gosh.
Wearing glasses, even smiling or crying.
Oh, my gosh.
The regime's paranoia and brutality knew no bounds.
And then there's S-21 prison, also known as Tool Sling.
Right.
Which I understand was just a site of unimaginable cruelty.
Yeah, S-21, a former high school.
Wow.
Converted into a torture chamber.
Oh, my God.
It's a stark example of the Khmer Rouge's brutality.
Yeah.
Out of an estimated 17,000 people in prison there.
Wow.
Only a handful survived.
What was the purpose of this place?
It wasn't simply about punishment.
Okay.
It was about control through terror.
Wow.
They use horrific torture methods, both physical and psychological,
Jeez.
to extract false confessions and break people's spirits.
Wow.
Imagine being held in a cramped cell, constantly interrogated, and forced to witness the torture of others.
Oh my God.
The psychological impact was profound.
It's just, I'm struggling to comprehend how any human being could inflict such suffering on another.
It's a question that haunts us all.
Yeah.
And the Khmer Rouge actually documented their atrocities meticulously, taking photographs and keeping detailed records of their victims, adding another chilling layer to their crimes.
Jeez.
These records now serve as evidence of their barbarity and a reminder of the depths of human cruelty.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's hard to even begin to like process the level of cruelty that you've described.
Yeah.
But as difficult as it is to confront, I think it's important we understand how this regime ultimately fell.
Yeah, the Khmer Rouge's brutality ultimately sowed the seeds of its own destruction.
Okay.
By 1978, their aggressive policies and border disputes with Vietnam led to a full-scale Vietnamese invasion.
So in a weird way, the violence that they inflicted on their own people ultimately contributed to their...
Yeah, it's a tragic irony.
Wow.
But the Vietnamese invasion, while controversial in its own right, effectively ended the genocide.
Oh.
Initially, many Cambodians welcomed the Vietnamese as liberators.
Right.
But the subsequent occupation brought its own set of challenges.
Right, so it wasn't a clean break.
Yeah.
There was still fighting and political instability.
Absolutely. It took years of negotiations and international efforts to finally reach a peace agreement in 1991.
Wow.
Paving the way for Cambodia's first democratic elections in 1993.
It's almost unfathomable to think that, almost a quarter of Cambodia's population, an estimated 1.7 million people perished under the Khmer Rouge regime.
Yeah.
How did the international community respond to these atrocities?
Right.
Did anyone face justice for these crimes?
So the road to justice has been long and complex.
Okay.
In 2006, the Khmer Rouge Tribunal, officially known as the Extraordinary Chambers in the Courts of Cambodia, or ECCC, was established to try senior leaders of the Khmer Rouge for crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes.
For those who might not be, familiar with this type of court, could you explain what makes the Khmer Rouge Tribunal unique?
So the ECCC is a hybrid court, meaning it combines elements of both Cambodian and international law.
Okay.
It's a unique model that was established with UN assistance, but operates within the Cambodian judicial system.
So what were some of the challenges that were faced by the tribunal?
So the ECCC faced numerous challenges, including political interference, limited resources, and the difficulty of gathering evidence and locating witnesses after so many years.
Right.
There were also debates about the scope of the trials and concerns about fairness and due process.
Sure.
But despite these challenges, there were some significant convictions.
Okay. So there were convictions.
Yes. In 2014, Khieu Samphan, the regime's head of state, and Nguyen Chi Pol Pot's second in command were convicted of crimes against humanity and sentenced to life in prison.
Wow.
And in 2018, they were found guilty of genocide in a separate trial.
Those convictions, decades after the genocide, must have been a powerful moment for survivors and their families.
They were the trials, though imperfect, provided a measure of accountability and a platform for survivors to share their stories and demand justice.
Right.
It was a crucial step in the process of healing and reconciliation.
And the ECCC's work went beyond just the trials themselves, right?
That's right. They also played a vital role in documenting the atrocities, collecting evidence, and preserving historical records.
Right.
This work is essential for truth-telling education and preventing future atrocities.
It's remarkable to think that Cambodia has emerged from this dark period to rebuild its society. What has the healing process?
It's been a long and painful journey.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to rebuild your life after witnessing such unimaginable horrors.
Yeah.
Losing loved ones and having your entire world shattered.
Yeah.
Many survivors suffer from PTSD, anxiety, depression, and the long-term health consequences of starvation and forced labor.
That level of trauma, it must be almost impossible to overcome. What efforts have been made to help survivors heal and prevent such horrors from happening again?
So there's been a significant focus on providing mental health services and psychosocial support to survivors and their families. Organizations like the Documentation Center of Cambodia have been instrumental in gathering evidence, preserving records, and educating the public about the Khmer Rouge regime.
It seems like education plays a key role.
Absolutely. Education is crucial.
Yeah.
By learning from the past, future generations can be empowered to prevent such atrocities from happening again.
Right.
There's a focus on knowledge sharing and education across all levels of Cambodian society.
We've talked a lot about the events of the genocide itself and its aftermath.
Right.
But I think it's also important to discuss what we can learn from this tragedy, both individually and as a global community.
Yeah.
How can we apply these lessons to prevent future atrocities?
It's a question we all must grapple with.
Yeah.
It's easy to look back at history and think, how could this have happened?
Right.
The truth is, the path to genocide is often paved with subtle, insidious steps.
Right.
And it's essential to recognize the warning signs before it's too late.
So what are some of those warning signs?
Okay, so one crucial lesson from the Cambodian genocide is the danger of extremist ideologies.
Okay.
The Khmer Rouge's vision of a pure agrarian society was so extreme.
Right.
It justified the elimination of anyone who didn't fit their narrow definition.
Yeah.
And we see this pattern repeat itself in other atrocities. The demonization of ethnic minorities, religious groups, or political opponents.
So recognizing dangerous ideologies, especially ones that dehumanize certain groups, is one red flag. What else should we be looking out for?
Another crucial warning sign is the erosion of democratic institutions and the rule of law.
Right.
Think about what happened under the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
They systematically dismantled any checks and balances on their power.
Right.
They shut down schools, newspapers, and courts, effectively silencing any opposition.
Yeah. It's a chilling reminder that freedom of speech, a free press, and an independent judiciary aren't just abstract ideals, they're essential safeguards against tyranny.
Exactly. And once those safeguards are gone, it becomes much easier for those in power to commit atrocities with impunity.
The sources we looked at also highlighted the role of propaganda and misinformation in fueling the violence.
Right.
The Khmer Rouge used propaganda to spread fear and hatred, turning neighbor against neighbor.
Yeah.
How can we combat the spread of such harmful narratives?
So propaganda is a powerful tool for manipulating public opinion and inciting violence.
Yeah.
It often thrives in environments where critical thinking and media literacy are lacking. That's why it's crucial to equip ourselves and future generations with the skills to question what we see and hear.
Right.
And to be aware of the ways in which information can be manipulated.
It sounds like preventing genocide requires a multifaceted approach. It does. It's not just about stopping the violence, right?
It's about addressing the root causes, the societal conditions that make such atrocities possible.
Right.
What can we do as individuals to contribute to this effort?
There's a lot we can do.
Okay.
We can educate ourselves about the warning signs of genocide and other mass atrocities.
Okay.
We can support organizations working to promote peace and human rights.
Right.
And most importantly, we can speak out against injustice whenever and wherever we see it.
Yeah.
Silence is complicity. We need to be upstanders, not bystanders.
Those are powerful words.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important to acknowledge that taking action can feel daunting, even overwhelming.
You're right. It can feel overwhelming, but even small actions can make a difference.
Right.
Sharing information, having difficult conversations, donating to organizations working on the front lines. These are all meaningful ways to contribute to a more just and peaceful world.
It all comes down to a sense of shared responsibility. Exactly.
We all have a role to play in upholding human rights and preventing atrocities.
Right.
The Cambodian genocide is a stark reminder of the consequences of inaction.
Right.
But it also reminds us that we have the power to make a difference.
I think that's a powerful message to carry with us as we move forward. You know, as we've been talking about this horrific chapter in history, I keep thinking about those who survived the Cambodian genocide.
Right.
What happened to them after the Khmer Rouge fell?
Yeah.
Can you truly rebuild your life after enduring such trauma?
I mean, it's a question many survivors still grapple with today.
Yeah.
You have to imagine Cambodia was utterly devastated.
Right.
Economically, socially, psychologically. It wasn't just about rebuilding infrastructure. It was about rebuilding lives, families, communities, and an entire nation's spirit.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So what did that healing process look like, both individually and collectively?
Well, there were so many layers to the healing process on an individual level.
Where many survivors were dealing with profound trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression.
Right.
Not to mention the physical scars left by starvation and forced labor.
Oh, my gosh.
There was also the ongoing search for missing family members.
Oh, wow.
The struggle to find justice.
Yeah.
And the need to somehow come to terms with the unimaginable horrors they had witnessed and experienced.
So it wasn't just about rebuilding the country, it was about rebuilding themselves.
Absolutely.
What kind of support was available to help survivors cope with such trauma?
There was a huge need for mental health services.
Right.
But resources were incredibly limited in the aftermath of the genocide.
Of course.
Slowly, organizations began to step in, offering counseling, therapy, and support groups.
Okay.
There was also a growing movement to document the atrocities, to give voice to the survivors, and to ensure that the truth of what happened would never be forgotten.
Those stories, those testimonies must have been incredibly powerful.
Oh, they were, both for the survivors themselves and for the process of national healing.
Yeah.
Sharing their stories was often a painful but cathartic experience for survivors.
Yeah.
It allowed them to reclaim their narratives, to honor the memory of those who were lost, and to connect with others who understood their pain.
For sure.
And for the country as a whole, these testimonies served as a stark reminder of the human cost of the genocide and the importance of preventing such atrocities from ever happening again.
We've talked about the Documentation Center of Cambodia.
Right.
What role did places like the Tuol Sleng Genocide Museum play in this process of remembrance and reconciliation?
Places like Tuol Sleng, the former S-21 prison, became powerful symbols of the Khmer Rouge's brutality.
Yeah.
Preserving these sites as museums and memorials serves a dual purpose.
Okay.
It allows us to bear witness to the horrors that took place, to honor the victims, and to learn from the past.
Yeah.
But it also provides a space for reflection, education, and hopefully reconciliation.
It seems like finding that balance between remembering the past and moving forward must be incredibly challenging.
It is, and it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Cambodia has made remarkable strides in rebuilding its society and promoting peace.
Right.
But the scars of the genocide run deep, and the trauma continues to impact generations.
So what can we as individuals living in a world where such atrocities sadly still occur learn from Cambodia's experience?
Right.
How can we contribute to a future where never again truly means never again?
The Cambodian genocide stands as a chilling reminder of the fragility of peace.
Right.
And the devastating consequences of unchecked hatred and intolerance. We must remain vigilant.
Yeah.
We must learn to recognize the warning signs, challenge harmful ideologies, and speak out against injustice wherever we see it.
Yeah.
We can support organizations working to promote human rights and peace. Right. And we can educate ourselves and others about the history of genocide and the importance of prevention.
It all comes back to that sense of shared responsibility that we talked about earlier.
Absolutely.
You know, it can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But as you said, even small actions can contribute to a more just and peaceful world.
Exactly. We can't afford to be bystanders.
Right.
We all have a role to play in creating a world where such horrors are truly relegated to the history books.
Well, this has been an incredibly heavy but important deep dive.
It has.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this difficult history.
Of course.
And for sharing your insights.
Thank you for having me. It's crucial that we keep these conversations going.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Cambodian genocide. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic.
Yeah.
Learning more about the history, the survivors, and the ongoing efforts for justice and prevention.
Right.
Because ultimately, knowledge is power.
It is.
And by understanding the past, we can work together to create a better future.